The stars around Earth dimmed as the massive fleet appeared. Ships stretched across space like a wall of metal and crystal. Each vessel was larger than Earth's biggest cities. Their hulls gleamed with strange patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the alien fleet through the main screen. Her officers worked quietly at their stations, but she could feel their fear. The alien ships numbered in the thousands. Humanity's entire fleet had maybe 200 vessels scattered across dozens of star systems. "Admiral, incoming transmission on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Torres from communications. "It's from the lead vessel." "Put it through," Chen said. She straightened her uniform and faced the screen. The image that appeared made several crew members step backward. The alien was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shift like liquid. Its eyes were solid black, and when it spoke, its voice carried an echo that suggested vast spaces and ancient power. "I am Admiral Kexthul of the Zephyrian Hegemony," the creature said. "We have come to claim this system and all human worlds. You have 72 of your hours to surrender completely. Resist and you will be destroyed." Chen kept her face calm. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Command. We request time to consider your terms." Kexthul's expression did not change. "There are no terms. We have conquered 847 species across this galaxy. Each believed they could negotiate. Each believed they were special. All submitted or were eliminated. You are species number 848. The alien continued speaking, but Chen was no longer listening to the words. She watched Kexthul's movements, the way he held himself, the confidence in his voice. This was a being who had never truly been challenged, who had never faced real defeat. "Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields," Kexthul said. "Your fastest ships move like insects compared to ours. Your technology is primitive. We have studied your broadcast for decades. We know everything about you. Do you?" Chen asked quietly. Something flickered across Kexthul's face. "Confusion, perhaps. Surrender now, and some of your population will be preserved as workers. Resist and all will perish. This is the only choice you will receive." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of machinery. "Orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Park, her second-in-command. Chen turned from the screen and walked to the tactical display. The alien fleet hung in space like a storm cloud, beautiful and terrible. Each ship pulsed with energy signatures that their sensors could barely detect. "Send a message to Earth Command," she said. "Tell them to begin Protocol 7 immediately. All civilian populations to emergency shelters. Full mobilization of all reserve forces." "Admiral," said Dr. Martinez, the fleet's science officer, "our analysis shows their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their defensive systems are unlike anything we've seen. How can we possibly fight them?" Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Doctor, what do you know about Earth's ancient history? About how small armies sometimes defeated much larger ones? Strategy, superior tactics, knowledge of terrain? All true. But there was something else. Something that made certain victories possible when they should have been impossible." Chen touched a control panel, and the image of the alien fleet zoomed in. "Sometimes, Doctor, the greatest advantage comes from letting your enemy think they understand you completely." She turned to face her crew. "These Zephyrians have conquered hundreds of species. They have a perfect record of victory. They study their enemies, learn their weaknesses, and apply overwhelming force. It's worked every time." "But Admiral," Torres said, "they said they've been monitoring our transmissions. They know our capabilities." "They know what we've let them see," Chen replied. "Send the activation codes to all human colonies. Begin the awakening process, and get me a direct line to the deep space monitoring stations." As her crew worked, Chen returned to the main screen. The alien fleet maintained perfect formation, their movements precise and coordinated. They were clearly experienced at this. How many worlds had they appeared above? How many species had stood where she stood now, watching their doom approach? "Admiral, Earth Command confirms Protocol 7 is active," Park reported. "All military assets are moving to designated positions. The outer colonies are implementing emergency procedures." "Good. What about our friends in the observation posts?" "They're confused by the orders but complying," Chen nodded. The observation posts were humanity's most closely guarded secret. Small stations hidden throughout the galaxy, staffed by volunteers who spent years watching alien civilizations. Officially, they were research stations. In reality, they were something else entirely. "Admiral, the Zephyrians are launching scout ships," reported the tactical officer. "Small vessels but heavily armed. They're heading for our outer defense platforms. Chen watched the alien scouts move with mechanical precision. No wasted motion, no uncertain movements. They flew like machines following a program. Perfect, predictable, and utterly confident. Do not engage, she ordered. Let them see what they expect to see. Admiral, our defense platforms will fire standard plasma charges. Our fighters will use conventional tactics. We will fight exactly like every other species they've encountered. Chen's voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the bridge. We will lose exactly like every other species they've encountered. Her crew exchanged glances. Some looked confused. Others seemed worried that their admiral had given up before the fight began. But a few, the older officers who had served with Chen for years, began to understand. The Zephyrians expect us to follow the pattern, Chen explained. They've studied us. They know our military doctrine, our weapon capabilities, our ship designs. They expect us to fight the way humans have always fought. She paused, watching the alien scouts sweep through the outer system like wolves circling prey. What they don't know is that humans have spent the last 50 years preparing for this exact moment. Not preparing to fight aliens with better technology. Preparing to fight aliens who think they know everything about us. Admiral, Dr. Martinez said slowly, what exactly is Protocol 7? Chen turned to face him, and for a moment her calm mask slipped. The expression underneath was fierce and determined, and something else. Something that might have been anticipation. Protocol 7, Doctor, is what we do when we stop pretending to be normal. The bridge fell silent again. On the main screen, the alien fleet waited with perfect patience. They had time. They had superior firepower. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. What they didn't have was any understanding of what humanity truly was. What it could become when survival required it. What it had been quietly preparing for since the day humans first looked up at the stars and wondered who else might be looking back. Chen walked to her command chair and settled into it. Around her, her crew prepared for what they thought would be humanity's final battle. They were wrong about that, but they were right about one thing. This would be a battle that changed everything. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like a promise of doom. But Admiral Sarah Chen smiled as she watched them, because she knew something they didn't. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its technology. It had always been its ability to surprise. The first battle began near Saturn's moon Titan. The human shipyards there had been building vessels for decades, massive construction platforms that stretched for kilometers. Admiral Kexthul watched from his flagship as human ships moved to defend them. Predictable, he said to his tactical officer. They formed defensive lines around important targets, just like species number 412, and 607, and 793. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward with perfect coordination. Each ship knew its role, its position, its target. They had done this dance of destruction so many times that it required no thought. Human plasma cannons fired first. Bright streams of energy reached across space toward the alien vessels. The shots struck Zephyrian shields and disappeared without effect. The shields didn't even flicker. Return fire, Kexthul ordered. Quantum disruptor beams lanced out from the Zephyrian ships. Where they touched human vessels, metal simply ceased to exist. The UES Yorktown, a heavy cruiser, took a direct hit to its engine section. The entire rear half of the ship dissolved into individual atoms, leaving the front half spinning helplessly through space. The UES Calgary tried to ram a Zephyrian destroyer. The human ship struck the alien vessel's shields and exploded against them like an insect hitting a window. The destroyer continued forward without slowing. This is almost disappointing, Kexthul's science officer said. Their technology is even more primitive than our scans indicated. Nuclear missiles? Kinetic railguns? What's next? Chemical explosives. But Lieutenant Zeshka, the tactical officer, frowned at his displays. Something was bothering him about the human retreat patterns. The ships that survived the first exchange weren't fleeing randomly. They moved with purpose, following specific routes, maintaining communication with each other even as they withdrew. Admiral, Zeshka said, the humans are sending strange transmissions as they retreat. Numerical sequences, but not standard military codes. Kexthul barely glanced at the data. Panic makes primitives do strange things. Continue the advance. The Zephyrian fleet pushed deeper into the solar system. Earth's defense platforms opened fire with everything they had. Particle beams, fusion warheads, experimental energy weapons that human scientists had worked on for years. All of it struck the alien shields and accomplished nothing. The return fire was devastating. Defense Platform Gamma 7, which had taken 15 years to build, vanished in a flash of disrupted matter. Mars Base Command went silent when a quantum beam punched through the planet's crust and hit the underground facility. But still, something was wrong. Zishka pulled up tactical recordings from previous conquests, species after species, all following similar patterns when faced with Zephyrian superiority. First came desperate conventional attacks, then increasingly wild and reckless strategies, finally either complete surrender or suicidal last stands. The humans were following the pattern perfectly, too perfectly. "Admiral," he said, "I recommend we examine the human retreat more carefully. Their movements are irrelevant," Kexthul interrupted. "They flee because they know they cannot win." As always, the human fleet had pulled back to Luna, Earth's moon. What remained of it, anyway? Of the 40 ships that had started the battle, only 16 survived. They took positions around Luna's far side, using the moon as a shield. Kexthul studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had lost over half their forces in the first engagement. Their weapons had proven completely ineffective. Their defenses had been swept aside like paper before fire. "Begin bombardment of Luna Base," he ordered. "Once their command center is destroyed, Earth will surrender." But as the Zephyrian ships moved around Luna, something unexpected happened. 3 human vessels that had been marked as destroyed suddenly reappeared, firing from concealed positions in Luna's crater fields. Their weapons were still useless against Zephyrian shields, but their appearance was disturbing. "How are those ships still functional?" Kexthul demanded. "Our sensors showed them destroyed." "Unknown, Admiral. They show heavy damage, but their engines and weapons are operational." More strangeness followed. Human pilots were ejecting from destroyed fighters and somehow appearing in other ships minutes later. It should have been impossible. Space was vast, and the battle was moving too fast for rescue operations. Yet the humans kept fighting with forces that should have been eliminated. "Admiral," Zeshka said carefully, "I've been analyzing the human communication patterns. The numerical sequences they're transmitting. They're not random. There's a structure to them, almost like they're sharing information in real time." "What kind of information?" "Everything, sir. Damage reports, tactical observations, weapon effectiveness data. But the speed of transmission is impossible. They're communicating faster than light across the entire battle zone." Kexthul finally gave his tactical officer his full attention. "Explain." Zeshka highlighted sections of the battle recording. "Watch this sequence. A human fighter observes one of our ships making an evasive maneuver. Within seconds, every other human vessel in the battle zone adjusts their firing patterns to compensate. Not minutes, not even full seconds. The response is nearly instantaneous. Impossible. No species has instantaneous communication across light years." "That's what I thought, sir. But look at this." Zeshka pulled up more data. Human ground forces on Mars responded to the space. Battle tactics before the light from the battle could have reached Mars. They knew what was happening here before they could possibly have seen it. For the first time in decades of conquest, Admiral Kexthul felt a flutter of unease. In over 800 victories, he had never encountered anything like this. Species had many different technologies, many different approaches to warfare, but they all followed the same basic limitations of physics. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered, "and increase our advance. I want this system conquered within the day." But as the Zephyrian fleet pushed toward Earth, more anomalies appeared. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Human tactics evolved in real time, adapting to Zephyrian strategies faster than should have been possible. And most disturbing of all, human casualties seemed to make the remaining forces more effective, not less. Zeshka compiled report after report. "Admiral, their learning curve is impossible. Each time we destroy a human ship, the others immediately know everything that ship learned about our weapons and defenses. They're sharing experiences instantly. No species can do that. No known species, sir." Kexthul stood before the great viewing window of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger ahead of them. The blue and green world looked peaceful, innocent, like so many others he had conquered. But something was different here. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Chen." The human admiral appeared on the main screen. She looked calm, almost relaxed, like someone who had just received good news. Admiral Kexthul, she said, I thought you might want to know. Protocol 7 is now fully active. Your Protocol 7 has accomplished nothing, Kexthul replied. Your fleets are scattered. Your defenses are broken. Surrender now and avoid further pointless destruction. Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You misunderstand. Protocol 7 wasn't about fighting you with ships and weapons. Protocol 7 was about stopping the pretense. What pretense? The pretense that we're like all the other species you've conquered. Chen's image flickered, and for a moment Kexthul could swear he saw not one face but thousands, all speaking in perfect unison. The pretense that we're actually separate individuals rather than something much more dangerous. The transmission ended. Kexthul stared at the blank screen, a cold certainty growing in his minds. For the first time in 8 centuries of conquest, he began to suspect that the Zephyrian hegemony might have made a terrible mistake. Behind him, Zeshka was frantically analyzing new data streams. Admiral, he said, his voice tight with fear, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human system, not from their ships or stations, from the humans themselves. The deeper the Zephyrian fleet pushed into human space, the stranger things became. Ships that had been destroyed in earlier battles somehow rejoined the fight. Human pilots ejected from exploding fighters and appeared in cockpits light years away within minutes. Ground forces on distant colonies responded to space battles as if they could see everything happening in real time. Admiral Kexthul paced his command deck, studying reports that made no sense. This is impossible, he said for the 10th time that hour. Physics doesn't work this way. Lieutenant Zeshka looked up from his console, face pale with fear. Admiral, I've been tracking human casualties across all fronts. We've killed over 30,000 humans in the past 6 hours, but their forces are becoming more effective, not less. Every death seems to make them stronger. Elaborate. Each human ship we destroy instantly transmits everything it learned about our weapons, our tactics, our weak points to every other human vessel. But it's not just data transmission, sir. They're sharing experiences, memories, knowledge that should die with them. Kexthul moved to the tactical display. The human resistance had shifted from conventional warfare to something else entirely. Their ships moved in perfect coordination across impossible distances. They anticipated Zephyrian maneuvers before they were executed. They adapted to new weapons faster than should have been possible. Bring me a prisoner, he ordered. I need to understand what we're fighting. Within hours, a Zephyrian boarding party had captured a damaged human destroyer. Most of the crew was dead, but they found one survivor in the medical bay. Commander Lisa Park, according to her uniform. She was injured but conscious. They brought her to Kexthul's flagship in restraints. She showed no fear as they escorted her to the interrogation chamber. If anything, she seemed curious about her surroundings. You are Commander Park of the human vessel Intrepid, Kexthul said. I am, she replied calmly. Your ship was destroyed. Your crew is dead. Your resistance is pointless. Why do you continue to fight? Park tilted her head as if listening to something only she could hear. Because we're not individuals, Admiral. We never have been. That was just the lie we told ourselves to feel normal. Explain. Park smiled. Every human child receives neural implants at birth. We told ourselves they were for education, for health monitoring, medical necessity. But that wasn't their real purpose, Kexthul leaned forward. This was the first useful information he'd gotten since the battle began. The implants create quantum-entangled connections between human brains. Park continued. Every thought, every experience, every memory can be shared instantly across any distance. For 3 generations, we've been quietly building the largest collective consciousness in galactic history. That's impossible. We scanned your populations. We detected no evidence of hive mind technology. Because we didn't want you to. Park's eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the walls of the ship. We've been watching you, Admiral. For decades. Every species you conquered, we had observers hidden among them. Every battle you fought, we studied. Every technique you used, we learned. Kexthul felt ice form in his chest cavity. You're saying you've been infiltrating our conquest? Not infiltrating, witnessing, learning, dying. Park's voice carried an echo that hadn't been there before, as if multiple people were speaking through her. Do you know what it's like to die 847 times? To experience every extinction you've caused? To feel each species' final moments as they realized they couldn't win? The interrogation chamber fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Kexthul stared at the human prisoner, beginning to understand the magnitude of what they faced. Every time you destroyed a world, some humans died with them, Park continued. And every death fed information back to the collective. Your weapons, your tactics, your weaknesses. We've been building a database of your capabilities for centuries, waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? To stop pretending we're separate individuals. Park closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they seemed to hold the light of billions of stars. Protocol 7 isn't a military operation, Admiral. It's evolution. Every human in the galaxy just removed the limiters we've been wearing our entire lives. Kexthul activated his communicator. Bridge, report on human fleet movements. Sir, came the panicked response. Human ships are exhibiting impossible coordination. They're moving in formations that require split-second timing across multiple star systems. And Admiral, they seem to know our battle plans before we implement them. How many humans are there? Kexthul asked Park, in space. Maybe 2 million in active service. Park smiled, and the expression was terrifying. On planets and stations? 12 billion. All connected. All sharing every thought, every experience, every moment of combat knowledge. That's impossible. 12 billion minds couldn't function as a collective without massive infrastructure. You're right. 12 billion individual minds couldn't. But we're not individuals anymore. Park stood, and her restraints fell away as if they had never been locked. We're something new. Something you've never encountered before. Alarms began blaring throughout the Zephyrian flagship. Kexthul activated the main view screen and saw something that defied belief. Human ships were phasing through solid matter, their hulls becoming translucent as they passed through asteroids and debris. Weapons fire curved around obstacles in ways that violated known physics. A destroyed human cruiser was somehow rebuilding itself from scattered wreckage. How? Kexthul whispered. When 12 billion minds work together perfectly, Park said. When every human shares every thought instantaneously. When we stop being limited by individual consciousness. Physics becomes more of a suggestion than a law. She walked to the view screen unrestrained and apparently unguarded. None of the Zephyrian soldiers moved to stop her. They seemed frozen by what they were seeing. You see, Admiral, you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. You studied our technology, our weapons, our military capabilities. You analyzed our broadcasts and our culture. You learned everything there was to know about individual humans. The view screen showed more impossibilities. Human fighters were appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Zephyrian quantum disruptors, which had been perfectly effective before, now seemed to pass harmlessly through human ships. The laws of cause and effect appeared to be breaking down. What you never realized, Park continued, is that individual humans were never the real threat. The real threat was what humanity could become when we stopped pretending to be separate. Kexthul watched his perfect fleet struggle against an enemy that seemed to rewrite reality with each passing moment. What are you? Park turned to face him, and her eyes reflected the light of 12 billion connected minds. We're what you get when you take the most adaptable, most creative, most stubborn species in the galaxy, and give them 3 generations to prepare for your arrival. She paused, listening to voices only she could hear. And Admiral, we're just getting started. The moment Protocol 7 fully activated, every human in the galaxy felt the change. On Earth, in the underground shelters, children stopped crying and looked up with adult eyes. On Mars colonies, farmers put down their tools and spoke in perfect unison. In the Outer Rim mining stations, workers turned from their machines and smiled with shared knowledge. 12 billion human minds connected as one. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, but she was no longer just Admiral Chen. She was also Private Rodriguez fighting on Ganymede, Dr. Kim treating wounded on Europa, and Captain Torres piloting a fighter near Neptune. She was every human who had ever lived and every human still fighting. All vessels, she said, and her voice carried the authority of 12 billion people. Stop limiting yourselves. Across human space, ships that had been following conventional physics suddenly weren't. The UES Yorktown, which had lost its rear section hours earlier, began rebuilding itself from cosmic dust and debris. Metal flowed like liquid, reforming into hull plating and engine components. Within minutes, the ship was whole again. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthul watched in horror as human vessels began phasing through solid matter. That's impossible, he said. Matter cannot pass through matter. It can when 12 billion minds believe it can, said Commander Park, who was still somehow standing free on his bridge. When every human physicist shares every thought instantaneously, when consciousness itself becomes the dominant force, your physics become suggestions. The Zephyrian fleet tried to adapt. Their AI systems, which had successfully analyzed 847 previous species, calculated new firing solutions and tactical approaches. But the humans were adapting faster. Every move the Zephyrians made was anticipated, countered, turned against them. Lieutenant Zeshka stared at his tactical displays with growing terror. "Admiral, human ships are appearing and disappearing at will. They're not using any propulsion system we can detect. They're just choosing to be in different locations." "Weapons fire report," Kexthol demanded. "Our quantum disruptors are having no effect, sir. Human vessels are somehow existing in states where our weapons can't interact with them, and their return fire." Zeshka's voice cracked. "Sir, they're not using conventional weapons anymore. They're directing pure force through focused consciousness." On the view screen, a human destroyer approached a Zephyrian cruiser. Instead of firing weapons, it simply focused its attention on the alien ship's hull. Metal began to twist and buckle under the weight of directed thought. The cruiser's shields, which had never failed before, collapsed as if they had never existed. "How many humans does it take to tear apart a starship with their minds?" Park asked conversationally. "We're finding out that it's fewer than you might expect." Across the solar system, the battle was turning into something that defied military understanding. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, each one guided by the collective knowledge of 12 billion minds. They anticipated enemy fire, appeared behind Zephyrian vessels instantaneously, and demonstrated technologies that seemed to be invented in real time. A group of human fighters surrounded a Zephyrian destroyer. Instead of attacking with weapons, they began to vibrate in perfect harmony. The resonance frequency they generated somehow bypassed the alien ship's shields and began to shake the vessel apart from the inside. "We're learning so much," said Admiral Chen, speaking from every human ship simultaneously. "Did you know that consciousness itself creates quantum effects when properly focused?" "We didn't either until about 10 minutes ago." Kexthol tried to rally his forces. "All ships implement pattern Zeta 7, maximum firepower concentration on the human flagship." Every Zephyrian vessel in the fleet turned its weapons on the UES Defiance. Quantum disruptor beams that could vaporize continents lanced through space toward Chen's ship. The beams passed harmlessly through the Defiance as if it wasn't there. "You see?" Chen's voice came from speakers throughout the Zephyrian fleet. "Individual humans are limited by physics. But we're not individuals anymore. We're something new, something that exists partially outside the normal rules of reality." A human science vessel drifted near Kexthol's flagship. Instead of attacking, it began broadcasting data directly into the Zephyrian ship's computers. Not through any communication system they could detect. The information simply appeared in their databases as if it had always been there. "We thought you might want to understand what you're really fighting," the data stream said. "We're uploading our complete historical records now." Zeshka watched in fascination and horror as human history unfolded on his screens. But it wasn't the history the Zephyrians had studied from intercepted broadcasts. This was the real history. The hidden history. "Look at this," he whispered to Kexthol. "Admiral, humans have been infiltrating galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. Every major species, every significant war, every technological advancement. They've had observers present for all of it." The data showed human agents embedded in alien societies across the galaxy, not as conquerors or spies, but as witnesses. Learning, recording, preparing, they had watched the rise and fall of empires, studied every form of warfare, analyzed every possible approach to conflict. 847 species you conquered, Park said, still standing calmly on the Zephyrian bridge. Humans were present for every one of those conquests. We died with those species. We felt their fear, their desperation, their final moments. And we learned from every single defeat. "But why?" Kexthol asked. "Why allow so much death if you had this power?" "Because we didn't have this power until now." Park gestured to the ongoing battle, where human ships were demonstrating abilities that seemed to rewrite fundamental laws. Consciousness on this scale requires preparation. 12 billion minds can't simply connect and function instantly. We needed time to develop the infrastructure, the protocols, the safeguards. She paused, and her expression became sad. And we needed the motivation. Humans are competitive by nature. We argue, we fight, we disagree. The only thing that could unite 12 billion humans into a single consciousness was an external threat that left us no choice. Us, Kexthal said quietly. You, Park confirmed. The Zephyrian hegemony became the catalyst for humanity's evolution. Every species you destroyed taught us more about what we needed to become. Every victory you achieved made us more desperate, more willing to sacrifice our individuality for survival. On the main view screen, the tide of battle had completely reversed. Zephyrian ships that had seemed invincible hours earlier were being systematically disabled by humans who no longer seemed bound by conventional limitations. Their weapons couldn't hit targets that existed in quantum superposition. Their tactics couldn't counter an enemy that knew their plans before they made them. Admiral, Zeshka reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 of our vessels. Their crews are confused. The humans aren't destroying them. They're just making it impossible for them to continue fighting. What do you mean? The humans are somehow convincing our weapon systems that they don't want to fire. Our engines believe they prefer not to move. Our shields think they'd rather not exist. Zeshka looked up from his console with wide eyes. Sir, they're not just manipulating matter and energy anymore. They're manipulating the fundamental concepts that make our technology work. Park smiled. When 12 billion minds share every thought, every idea becomes more real than reality. We're not just fighting you with weapons anymore, Admiral. We're fighting you with focused belief. The battle was over, though the fighting continued. The Zephyrian hegemony, undefeated for millennia, was losing to an enemy that had transcended the basic assumptions about what war could be. And in the depths of space around Earth, 12 billion human minds continued to evolve, to learn, to become something that the galaxy had never seen before. Something that made the Zephyrians' perfect record of conquest seem like a child's game played with toys. The final battle took place above Earth, where Admiral Kexthal made his last stand with the Zephyrian flagship Dominion Eternal. The massive vessel, larger than most human cities, hung in space surrounded by the impossible sight of human ships that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. All remaining ships formed defensive formation around the flagship, Kexthal ordered. But even as he spoke, he knew it was pointless. Half his fleet had already surrendered, their crews unable to operate weapons that no longer believed in their purpose of causing harm. The human ships moved in patterns that hurt to watch. They flowed through space like schools of fish made of light and metal, appearing and disappearing in response to thoughts rather than thrust. The UES Defiance materialized directly in front of the Dominion Eternal, so close that the two ships should have collided. Instead, they occupied the same space without touching, existing in parallel dimensions that somehow shared the same location. Admiral Kexthal, came Admiral Chen's voice, but it wasn't just her speaking. It was the voice of 12 billion humans speaking in perfect unity. We need to talk. Kexthal found himself transported to his own bridge, though he couldn't remember moving. Chen stood before him, but she wasn't alone. Thousands of ghostly human figures stood behind her, and behind them, millions more stretching back into infinity, the collective consciousness of humanity made manifest. This is impossible, Kexthal whispered. You keep saying that, Chen replied with amusement. You've said it about everything we've done today. Perhaps you need to expand your definition of possible. Lieutenant Zeshka, who was somehow also present though he'd been on a different deck moments before, stared at the human figures with scientific fascination. Admiral, I'm detecting quantum signatures I've never seen before. They're not just sharing thoughts. They're sharing existence itself. Chen nodded approvingly. Finally, someone who begins to understand. Yes, Lieutenant. We're no longer bound by individual existence. 12 billion minds, perfectly connected, create something greater than the sum of their parts. She gestured, and the space around them filled with images. Not holograms, but direct projections of memory and experience. Kexthal saw the Zephyrian conquest from a new perspective. Human observers hiding among the populations of doomed worlds, feeling the fear, the desperation, the final moments of species after species. Every world you conquered, Chen said softly. Humans died there too. We felt every extinction. We experienced every defeat. We learned from every moment of terror and loss. The images shifted to show human children on distant colonies, their neural implants activating for the first time, generation after generation, building the network that would eventually encompass all of humanity. a secret evolution spanning 3 centuries. We've been preparing for you specifically, Chen continued. The Zephyrian hegemony, the perfect conquerors, the species that never loses. We studied your methods, your technology, your psychology. We learned everything about you. But we studied you as well, Kexthul protested. We monitored your transmissions, analyzed your culture, understood your capabilities. The ghostly figures behind Chen began to laugh. Not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. The sound of 12 billion people sharing the same joke. You studied what we wanted you to see, Chen said. Individual humans. Divided, argumentative, limited by normal physics and conventional thinking. We've been acting that role for centuries, waiting for the right moment to drop the pretense. What are you really? Kexthul asked. Chen's expression became thoughtful. We're not sure ourselves yet. This is the first time we've fully connected all 12 billion minds. We're discovering new capabilities every moment. Watch. She pointed at a nearby bulkhead and it began to change. The metal flowed like water, reforming itself into new configurations. Not through any technology Kexthul could detect, but through pure focused will. Consciousness shapes reality when properly applied, Chen explained. Individual human minds can barely affect quantum probability. But 12 billion minds working in perfect harmony? We're finding that reality is much more flexible than anyone imagined. Zeshka was frantically taking readings. Admiral, the humans are somehow manipulating fundamental forces through focused thought. They're not using technology as we understand it. They're directly interfacing with the quantum substrate of reality. But why show us this? Kexthul asked. You could simply destroy us. And the Zephyrian hegemony completely. Chen's expression grew sad. Because destruction was never the goal. Survival was. And now that we've ensured our survival, we have a choice to make about what comes next. The space around them shifted again, showing new images, not of conquest or warfare, but of cooperation. Zephyrians and humans working together on vast projects, ships that combined human consciousness manipulation with Zephyrian technology, worlds where multiple species lived and thrived under human protection. You see, Chen said, we learned something important from watching all those species die. Conquest is temporary. Cooperation is eternal. We could destroy the Zephyrian hegemony, but that would just make us the next great threat that some other species would have to prepare for. What are you proposing? Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked like just one person instead of the avatar of 12 billion minds. We're proposing that you join us, not as conquered subjects, but as partners. Your knowledge of galactic civilization combined with our ability to transcend normal limitations. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Kexthul stared at her. In 8 centuries of conquest, no enemy had ever offered him alliance after demonstrating superior power. And if we refuse, then you're free to leave, Chen said simply. We won't pursue you. We won't hunt down your remaining ships. But you'll never be able to conquer another world because we'll be watching. Everywhere you go, humans will already be there, ready to stop you. She gestured and new images appeared. Human observers on thousands of worlds across the galaxy, not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians, protecting species that couldn't protect themselves from threats like the Zephyrian hegemony. This is what we've always been, Chen said. Protectors. We just needed to become strong enough to protect everyone. Kexthul looked around his bridge, seeing his officers' faces. Fear was there, but also something else. Wonder. The possibility of being part of something greater than endless conquest. The Zephyrian Empire has existed for over a millennium, he said slowly. We've never served anyone else. We're not asking you to serve, Chen replied. We're asking you to evolve, to become something more than conquerors, to help us build a galaxy where no species has to face extinction alone. Lieutenant Zeshka stepped forward. Admiral, the humans are offering us a chance to be part of the most significant development in galactic history. A collective consciousness spanning multiple species. The scientific possibilities alone. Kexthul closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 800 years of conquest. All those species destroyed. All those worlds reduced to silence. Had any of it been worth it? Had the Zephyrian Empire really accomplished anything beyond spreading fear across the galaxy? If we join you, he said finally, what happens to Zephyrian culture? Our identity? Chen's smile was warm and genuine. It becomes part of something larger. Your knowledge, your experiences, your unique perspective, all preserved and shared. Death of individuality, birth of something greater. She extended her hand toward him. The choice is yours, Admiral. Join us willingly and help build a galaxy where cooperation replaces conquest. Refuse, and face a future where you'll never be able to hurt anyone again. Kexthul looked at her hand, then at his officers, then at the ghostly figures of 12 billion humans standing behind their admiral. For the first time in centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had encountered something truly greater than itself. And for the first time in his life, Admiral Kexthul discovered that surrender could be the beginning of something wonderful, rather than the end of everything he'd known. He reached out and took Chen's hand. The galaxy shuddered as 12 billion human minds welcomed their first alien partners, and the age of conquest ended with a handshake instead of destruction. In the depths of space, something new was being born. Something that would make the old dreams of empire seem small and petty, compared to the infinite possibilities of true cooperation. Humanity had revealed its ultimate power, not weapons or technology, but the ability to transform enemies into allies and to build something greater than any one species could achieve alone.